No. It's a happy hour.
Good. Okay, good.
Cheers. This is our third happy hour, ARC's Duo happy hour conversation, and our guest today is Doug Perry, along with our president of our board, Daniel Tomko, and vice president, Scott Quade.
Wait,
who works.
Scott's on your board?
Scott's on our board, yeah.
Wow.
Surprise.
This was the official announcement.
Right.
The vice president.
Oh my.
He's VP, yeah. The
Big deal.
One of the most important, he's the manipulation, the guy behind the scenes.
Yeah, moving up in the world. That's great, Scott.
Not sure about that. No.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's up-ish, for Scott at least, but.
Is that a short?
But.
Wow.
But this should be an interesting conversation because we are focused on a little bit of a tech talk in this world of COVID-19 for Mari and I, who have never really explored being online, are now in a situation where we are having to learn how and upgrading some of our equipment and trying to figure out how to actually get online, how to stream, how to record. And we thought it would be cool to talk to you about that and kind of learn a little bit from the guru, Doug Perry, about streaming and having an online presence. We had talked a little bit before we started. Scott, do you want to talk about when you first met Doug?
Sure. Yeah. So, Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was in around 2011, and we were both auditioning for Yale.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I had just finished up my undergrad at Truman State University in Missouri, and and I went to go. I remember going into Yale, and I was bringing in rebonds, Xenakis, and I believe you were too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and so I think we just briefly met, like, he auditioned like right before me, and then we kind of just met in the hallway. But yeah, that was the first time we met, and then we've obviously stayed in touch over all these years and become great friends. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Doug. I mean, that might be.
Maybe we're not great friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say we're certainly friends. Oof. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, and you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, but you guys have been in touch a little bit recently as well, talking about different streaming and things like that. Because Scott works for video production at Vic Firth and puts out all those beautiful videos that people see at Vic Firth. And you guys have been in touch kind of about some of this streaming platforms and different things.
Yeah, I mean, this has been happening with, I've had this experience with a number of musicians and folks in the arts in various levels over the past couple of weeks to talk about, streaming platforms in general. Yeah, and Scott and I have sort of been bouncing back and forth. How does this sound? How does this look? What do you think of this platform? What do you think of that platform? I've actually had a great time learning from Scott, who just the other day showed me a platform that he was using to do something for Vic Firth that I'd never seen before. So it was really neat it's been eye-opening for me as well, honestly.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you mean by platform?
Aha. Great question. So there are a number of different ways that somebody could, if they choose to, stream themselves live on the internet now. And there are some like fairly common ones that you're probably used to seeing, such as Facebook Live, Instagram, YouTube, and even Twitch. And then even from there are more specialized platforms that are designed to broadcast to those outlets. And that's what Scott was showing me the other day, is a program called StreamYard, which is a browser-based, I guess, sort of ingest platform where you're able to stream, audio and video from your webcam directly to that, and that will organize it, present it how you want it to be presented, and act as a control room for you to broadcast that to whichever one of those outlets you want to broadcast to.
So is that like a control panel, like mixing board sort of thing that enables you to do like higher level production then ultimately land on something like a Facebook Live or a YouTube or?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, the one that Scott was showing me, StreamYard, is it's a pretty intuitive and very streamlined one where it seems to be geared towards podcast style presentations. So, You have a few video feeds on the screen. They're talking back and forth, maybe some sort of nice overlay, some sort of nice image to frame what's going on. And then it doesn't involve much setup at all. It's a very user-friendly and very efficient way of doing that versus what I'm doing right now, which is where my when I stream, all of my scenes are basically made from scratch. And I'm using very basic but open source, open-ended broadcasting software to transmit that to those platforms.
In terms of streaming, what do you mean, and this might be a dumb question, but what do you mean made from scratch comparatively to a streaming site?
So I guess you can kind of, I think a good analogy here would be like when you're making a website, let's say. There are like, if you were to say like, okay, it's time to make ArcStudio a website, you basically would have two choices, right? You could go to a website like Wix or Squarespace or something like that, that would probably have a few templates ready for you, right? And you could like say, okay, I want my website to look like this. You choose that template and it kind of sets everything up for you, right? And then from there, you can maybe say, but I need to change this text here and I need to put my picture there and so on and so forth. And then your website will be ready to go. Or you could say, I want to build this thing from the ground up. I want to start with a blank page and put everything where I want it to go, right? So I guess that's
like
the
templates.
sort of difference. Yeah, so like
Sure.
in this case, StreamYard is a great example of something that uses a lot of templates to just get you ready to go. And what I'm using, which is software called Open Broadcaster Software, OBS, is just a blank screen and then you have to build it all yourself.
Is it harder to, and Scott, maybe you can talk to this as well, messing around with StreamYard right now. StreamYard, you're saying, is very easy to use. OBS, is it harder or is it just a little bit more time?
Well, personally, I wouldn't say it's harder. I mean, I'll let Scott answer that too, because one thing that I should stress here is that Scott is a completely, Scott, I'm not saying like Scott is using StreamYard because he doesn't know how to do that. Like he knows how to do that, but yeah, it just,
that's why he's
takes,
our VP.
Yeah. No, to use something like OBS, it just takes a little more time, but you have more control, you know?
It's funny.
And
I actually just
I'll
ran
let you
into
answer.
OBS in my line of work also.
Oh, wow.
I actually have it installed on my work computer and I'm using it.
In what, out of curiosity, in what context?
So I work for a company called Panopto, and we're an online learning content platform. And we support OBS as a source for webcasting. So I've been using OBS for some testing, and I would not claim to be an expert at OBS, but it's funny that my worlds are colliding in this in this chat.
This way.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I would say OBS is definitely more professional than StreamYard. And, you know, if we were, you know, as Vic Firth and Zildjian, if we were broadcasting from like one location, you know, if we were able to be at the office right now, I would definitely be using something like OBS or Wirecast or, you know, something a little more professional. But, you know, since we're obviously at the mercy of everybody that we're interviewing being in unique, you know, their own location, you know, these browser-based platforms have really been a good alternative in the meantime.
And you were saying that StreamYard, you can link to Facebook and stream on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all this stuff at the same time. You can throw out to other platforms. Yeah,
so you can, with the professional plan, you can do up to 5 platforms at once. You know, Instagram is unique as they don't allow any sort of, you know, streaming beyond their own platform. So, but, you know, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Periscope, all of those.
Periscope. That was a long time ago, I feel like. Maybe they're still a thing. I'm not really sure.
Still there. Yeah, still there.
So Doug, tell us kind of where you are right now and what this is and what this whole room is for.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm at home. This is where I live.
Which is where? No, I'm just joking.
Yeah. Let me give my address, my social security number. No, so like, I moved to this this place about like a year and a half ago or so. And honestly, I did actually move here kind of with the intent of finding a place where I can stream. I live with 2 other musicians that do a lot of home recording and are also like familiar with streaming platforms. And when we were looking for a place to live, we were specifically looking for places with some sort of large finished basement environment so that we could set up a shared studio. I get half of it because I'm the percussionist and I have all the stuff. And the bass player gets that part, and then the flute player / singer gets that part over there. But so over here on my half of the studio, this is where I do all of my recording and all of my streaming. Yeah, so as far as you know, my Twitch streaming stuff is concerned, I basically have setup where I've got microphones set over all the instruments. Vibraphone doesn't have them right now because because my bass playing roommate Sam is doing doing a recording gig for I think like Berkeley College right now or something as we speak. He's taking a break so I can talk to you guys. But but so normally I have microphones there and there. I've got two under the marimba as well. I've got a microphone under the bass end to try to pick up, you know, the beautiful low end of the instrument that we all love and covet so much, as well as another condenser microphone that I have attached to a looping station so that I can, you know, make loops on the fly and stuff. And then I've got, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna ask, like, is that condenser microphone under the bass section, is that micing the resonators, or is that just under the keys themselves? Like, how are you
so
doing
actually the bass microphone is actually not a condenser. It's actually a kick drum microphone that I just don't use very much. It's like a one of the Shure Betas. Yeah, I put it there and, you know, just kind of messed around with the gain and the levels and stuff just because, you know, I mean, these two microphones, which are Line Audio CM3s, they do a pretty good job of picking up the marimba. They're also, you know, small diaphragm condenser microphones, but I mean, the percussionists in the room know how much we want to hear the resonance. There's nothing like hearing like the low end of the marimba, you know, in like a really great space. So I put that there, and I've got like a lot of extra reverb on it too, so that I can juice that if I want to when I'm streaming. And then the other condenser microphone is just actually there just to pick up the whole instrument, and honestly, a lot of the room. I find that it really does pick up quite a bit of this space, and so I just kind of have it there as this weird weird ground level room microphone that I'm thinking about maybe finding a different spot for it, because I'll oftentimes also run over to like some of the hand percussion I have here, some of the steel pans that I've got in the background, to add those to the loops whenever I do them as well. In addition to those microphones, I've got the one that I've got on my head right now, which is just a basic Shure headset dynamic microphone. And then I have multiple cameras set up in the room as well. So right now you're seeing just a general overview of my studio space, but when I'm streaming, I also have some overhead microphones set up so that you can see me playing marimba in real time or vibraphone in real time from an overhead perspective. And sometimes I'll switch to close-ups of just those microphone or cameras as well, depending on what I'm doing.
So what is that thing on the wall that you keep touching to change the image? How is that doing that?
So it's actually an old cell phone that I don't use anymore, from like an upgrade or two ago, which you know, if you've got an old phone and you know, it's not really good for making calls anymore or anything like that, you just take everything off of it and it turns into a little tablet, you know? So I I Velcroed it to the wall, which is how I've got my overhead cameras set up as well. And then I actually have a similar thing. This is actually a piece of hardware over here that does the same thing.
Wait, so you've got phones on your ceilings for your cameras?
These are actually basic Logitech webcams. I can't remember what this one is. Yeah, this one's like a C270, I think, and this Logitech C270, and this one's a Logitech C922.
Those are the cameras above the instruments. I see.
Yep, exactly. Then this one right here is a GoPro Hero 4.
Okay, so basic webcams and a GoPro for your camera setup. And then what's your sound system? Like, you've got a bunch of different types of microphones. Like, how are you bringing this all together and turning it into a manageable system?
Yep. So I am part of this is that I'm a PC user, so that kind of affects the types of software that I'm able to use. Because they're actually in the computer world, or in the audio world, I should say, there's not a lot of overlap between software. You know, like I hear about, you know, graphic artists and visual people using the same things, like everybody uses Photoshop and stuff like that, and that's cross-platform. We don't really experience that quite as much in the audio world. I hear about a lot of You know, a lot of like, you know, Mac users will like explicitly use like programs like Logic, you know, whereas PC users may not. But I use a few different things here. First of all, here, I can actually show you this and also show off another camera trick that I have for you all at the same time.
You just love to show off, don't you?
Oh yeah, I love it. So we're gonna go on a little tour over here. So they're all plugged into a interface here. This is a Scarlett Focusrite 18i8. And actually, this is the computer that I'm running everything through right here, which I actually built earlier this year, a couple months ago, right before all of this went down. I was pretty lucky timing-wise. Anyway, that Scarlett 18i8 is a 8 microphone interface or 8 line-in interface. So I'm able to plug in 8 microphones simultaneously to that. From there, I'm running everything through a program, a digital audio workstation or DAW called Reaper. Reaper, I normally recommend this one to anybody who's interested in getting into this type of audio work, because they have a very accessible flexible evaluation period and philosophy, so that they give you a very long period of time to try out their software with no restriction at all. And they when it is time to pay for it, they have multiple license levels depending on how much money you make. So if you're not like a big industry professional who makes all of their living on doing this type of work, they're not going to expect you to pay the same amount as somebody who does. So it's a software that I really do support. I think they do great work, and
This is Reaper?
Yeah, this is Reaper. I'm always singing the praises of Reaper. It's such a great program.
Is that Windows only, or is that Windows and Mac?
It is cross-platform. It is
okay.
cross-platform. Yeah, I don't see as many. I don't run into as many Mac users who use it for whatever reason. But it's very powerful. I know a lot of professional composers and audio engineers who swear by this program, and now I do too. But but basically, the setup that I have right now, and this is where things get a little complicated and convoluted, is that I have all of the microphones monitoring input, which means that they're actively picking up sound, right, for me to hear. Like if I were to plug in like speakers or something, you would be able to hear all the sounds that I'm playing and hear coming out the speakers. They're all monitoring input, and I'm using a special audio driver that I've installed on my computer called Synchronous Audio Router to take all of that input and route it to a custom microphone channel that I created that is this program. So I'm running all of the video and all of the audio then into this program, OBS. And this one, actually, I use this the Streamlabs skin. So we call it Streamlabs OBS, which is just another variation on the same program. So it's basically like kind of like turning all of these microphones using Reaper as a mixer into a 2-channel input that I plug into OBS, and then all the cameras are also running into that. From there, I can fiddle around with little things like what the scenes look like, how images are cropped, if I need to line up the video and the audio, like how much delay I should anticipate something having, so I can make sure everything looks and sounds the way I want it to at the same time. And once that's all done, I hit go live, and then I can stream.
So you're effectively pre-mixing all of your microphone inputs such that by the time it hits the streaming, your OBS really,
yeah,
it's already like the levels are adjusted, the balance is there.
Exactly. There's some wiggle room there, in that the OBS, this program does have like a lot of like audio effects that you can work with. So I know a lot of folks who, if they're doing something simple, if they're like maybe just like streaming themselves playing one instrument, for example, they kind of don't need to go through all of that. They can probably just go straight into OBS, and it'll have things like, you know, an equalizer that you can put on it, a compressor if you need to adjust your volume levels, and things like that to help them get the sound that they're looking for. Because I have so many microphone inputs, OBS actually doesn't allow you to have more than 2 audio inputs into the program. So I have to use this system in order to funnel my audio down to this program in particular.
Which at this point, when it's going into OBS, it's a single input, right? You're funneling it all through the Scarlett and mixing it, and then it goes into OBS as one.
Yep.
Well, Scarlett, through the Scarlett, that's the audio interface that hits the computer into Reaper. if I'm getting this all correct,
Yep.
right?
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Reaper is now taking the disparate microphone inputs that are all being turned into a digital signal through the Scarlett.
Mm-hmm.
You're mixing those down to 2 channels,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's what's going to OBS.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
All right.
exactly the flow. Yeah, you got it.
So out of curiosity, this is a question that I wanted to ask anyway. Mari and I are trying to build our arsenal of things to be able to do some of these things, but it's super new, and we're figuring it out. For anybody who's like watching this, who has always been interested in streaming, but there's a lot of, it seems like it's complicated, right? What is like if you wanted to get set up in a week, and you have like a few basic things, like maybe a single microphone, you have the instrument, you have a computer and a phone, and let's say a tablet, just for fun. What do people need at the most basic level to like get online next week?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to jump ahead. I'm going to skip over a lot of the things that you just said and say that the first thing you need to do is actually just hit go live. The one thing that keeps so many musicians from doing this is worrying about whether or not they have like the perfect setup figured out or everything figured out the way they need it to. And I can't stress this enough. It's not going to go right the first time. It's just not. And but in the same way that we all practice our, practice music, practice our instruments, like you don't expect the first time you open up a piece of music, you don't expect yourself to play it right, you know? You shouldn't expect your first stream to go exactly the way that you want it to go. And that was certainly the case for me. And that's certainly been the case with every single musician who I've seen start on Twitch. And let me tell you, I've seen folks with, seemingly meager and, kind of like, putting things together as they go, but I've seen them like really blossom with success. So like the most important thing is to just go for it, to just try it out, take a chance. And you're going to find that because it's live, whatever audience you have, they're going to be right there with you. They're going to have a great time seeing you. It's just exciting to get to connect with people this way, whether or not you have the perfect sound quality or not. That being said, I will say that like when I first started doing this, I didn't have nearly all of this stuff. And the only reason that I have so many things is because I added them piece by piece as I started doing this. So when I started out, I really only had one camera and one mic. In fact, I had the camera that I have over the marimba, this one right here. That was the only camera that I had when I first started doing this. And I had it positioned somewhere like in front of the marimba. And then I had like a pair of microphones over the marimba. And those were my only 2 audio inputs, right? And I played marimba into that. I talked into those microphones, and then I streamed that way, and it was great, and I had a great time. And a bunch of things went wrong, but it was fine. And so that's kind of like the first thing I would say then is that if you have some sort of camera that you can use, and that camera could be anything from a nice like a DSLR or something like that with live HDMI preview, and you can get yourself like a capture device for that, then cool. Or if you've got the little webcam that's built in onto your laptop and you can put that somewhere where it can pick you up, that's great. Either one is great for when you start doing this sort of thing, because it's at the base level, you just need to be able to put yourself on screen. And then if you have some sort of nice microphone that can pick up your instrument, great. And once again, that could be a beautiful stereo pair of microphones that you've got running through your great audio interface into your computer, or that can be like a simple USB mic that you picked up at Guitar Center before this all went down. Or even in some cases, it could just be your phone. I've seen some people stream like off their phone or off a tablet, and the audio is that quality, but you still get to play your instrument and people get to listen to you, and it's fine. And I honestly, like in situations where I've wanted to maintain my, like when you stream, when you have a regular performance, you try to retain viewership by continuing to output content. And sometimes I'll be on a trip like away from this studio for weeks at a time. There's last summer I was doing a camp in Long Island, and I didn't have any of this. I just had my phone, and there was a piano, so I just set my phone up near the piano and I played some tunes that way. And yeah, it's not the best sound quality in the world, but you still get to play your instrument. People still get to listen to you, and you get to engage and interact.
So starting to do it and continuing to do it regularly seems like more important than all of this stuff.
Exactly. If you watch somebody stream a concert and they've got a great setup, I've seen some music streamers who make my setup look like kindergarten. They've got like lots of really, really high quality cameras. I see some of these guys where they have like the thing that moves the camera really slowly back and forth as they're playing,
Nice.
Like, they got like some of these drummers playing on virtual kits who have like LEDs under the heads that light up when they hit the drums, like all these like super cool things like that. And I watch them and I go, oh man, that's a lot of stuff. How do I get all that stuff? So like, yeah.
LEDs under your marimba bars.
Oh yeah, that was definitely inspired by some of those drummers. I was like, hey, they can put their LEDs in the drums. I can do that too. Come on. But yeah, no, I really think that, you can look at something like this and think like, oh man, before I stream, I need to have all of this stuff. And I actually really don't recommend it because you're not going to get started. You're going to keep tweaking your setup until you think it's perfect. And then you're going to keep finding things that you want to change. And then you're going to second guess yourself and then nothing's going to happen. It's better to just, say, okay, this is the first time I'm doing this. I'm going to get a microphone and put a camera up. I got my instrument out. Let's play some scales, whatever. Hit go,
So how much of what you do is live versus, I mean, so far the conversation's all been around live.
Yeah.
But how much do you do 100% live? Do you sometimes pre-record and then stream the pre-recorded content? Like, what are the pros and cons?
As far as streaming goes, I typically don't have pre-recorded content that I stream. The only things like that I have are maybe like I have like a couple videos of like where that says like stream starting soon, or thank you for coming, or be right back, which are pre-recorded videos of like that stuff written on a marimba bar, like like in my space somewhere where the lights are changing. So I've got a few things like that as like little pieces of media that I might put on if I like have to go to the bathroom or something. But otherwise, no, it's all live. When I'm performing on a stream, I am 100% on the fly. And actually, since and this is going into a little more about my specific career, but I specialize a lot in improvisation. I have a background as a jazz vibraphonist. So it's very seldom that I actually prepare anything ahead of time for a stream. And most of the time what I'm doing is I'm taking requests live from viewers, listening to pieces of music that they send me and improvising on or around them. Yeah.
It sounds like a ton of fun.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, you stream every Monday? Is it every Monday?
Yeah, unless except for this past Monday when I have food poisoning. Otherwise, yeah. Every Monday, and right now I'm also doing Thursdays because we are in these trying times and I'm home. So I've added another day.
These are on Twitch, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And they're live for like 3 hours.
I've been doing 4 hours lately, so 3 to 4 hours. Yeah.
Wait, you've been playing for 3 to 4 hours straight?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Doug is the #1 marimba streamer on Twitch.
It's true. I'm actually up until very recently, I think I'm basically the only one right now. Earlier, there was another one, a streamer who went by Cacophony.
Oh yeah.
Kelsey.
Yeah. Yep. I went to school with them at Peabody actually, and they started streaming as well. But they've switched over, I think, to like Instagram or Facebook. They haven't used Twitch as a platform in a while, which is too bad because I really enjoyed having a little bit of a rapport or banter. But that's another part of this, is that everybody finds a home in a different platform if they get into doing this enough. And so for me, I found that platform on Twitch, but that's not going to be the case for everyone.
All this stuff that you use for streaming as well, to talk about another part of your career anyway, you do a lot of recording also. Does most of this stuff cross-platform in that regard, even if you're trying to record a live video, which you said you don't do and stream pre-recorded material, but if you're trying to record yourself, you can use this setup to do so, and I assume manage it after the fact.
Yep,
right?
Exactly. So that's one of the benefits about having this setup, is that I keep it this way, for the most part. And then whenever I need to, if I do need to do a studio recording gig, or if I'm working on like a video or something, I do stuff on YouTube from time to time. So that is an example of when I would do like a pre-recorded thing. I normally just don't stream those things. I normally would just put that up on my YouTube page and say, okay, everybody, that arrangement's done, go watch it. And so that's like a pre-recorded video. But there are some differences there. Like, first of all, I have a different camera that I use for that. I have like an Olympus point and shoot camera that's pretty nice that I normally use to record videos for things like YouTube. Unfortunately, that camera does not work for streaming. It does not have a live HDMI preview. If it did, I would be using that. I really wish it did. So I keep that one specifically for YouTube, and I'll set that up, based on what kind of angle that I want. I'll also move things around in the room depending on what I'm playing. So for ease of video, because right now I've got everything up against the wall so that I have space. But as you can probably tell, it makes it difficult to, place a camera on the other side of the marimba, when there's the wall in the way.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but then that being said, though, the microphones, I use all of those for any other recordings that I do. There, you see these baffles here that I have on either side of the room. I basically use those to frame the stream when I'm streaming, but I'll also move those around depending on what instrument I'm recording to make sure that I'm not picking up extraneous noise coming from my computer or the particularly bathroomy resonance of my stairwell over here that I don't really want. And actually, I have to thank my roommate Laura for these. She's a vocalist, and she got these to do her like vocal recordings, and because I live with her, I get to use them. So
Yeah.
So the downstairs gets rearranged a little bit depending on who's down there doing their thing.
Exactly, and we have a nice system now of a studio schedule with like, I'm using the studio, but you can be down here and make noise, or I'm using the studio, please try to be quiet, but it's okay if you're here, or I'm using the studio, go away, don't get anywhere near here, and don't like do anything upstairs either, like leave the house if you can,
There's a schedule upstairs in the refrigerator. Everybody else has.
Yeah, exactly. Right next to all of our like drawings,
Right.
One thing I'm always curious about, actually, and I see a lot of sound pads around your studio.
Yep.
To capture and help sound, the difference between sound treatment, soundproofing, and how you decide where to place things, and in a streaming sense, how big of a difference that really makes.
Yeah. So, okay. I'll take you guys on a tour again, actually, to show this. So when we first moved here, there was nothing on the walls, like no pads like this. And our floor was tile, as you can see a little bit over there.
Oh,
so when we first came down here, this place basically sounded like a big bathroom. It was very resonant, had a lot of high reflections. So like that really sort of springy sort of reverb that you would hear. And that wasn't going to work if we wanted to record here, obviously. But we knew that can be, there are things that you can do about that. So this is just part of treating a space in general. If you want to convert an extra room or something like that into a recording space, or even if you've just got like a real big closet or something like that, you can do that too, depending on what instrument you play. But so yeah, so first things first is you want to reduce the number of solid reflective surfaces that you have. So tile is a big no-no, which was fun for us to deal with, because tile is very reflective. And then, flat walls and especially corners and edges are really bad. When sound hits those, they reflect off each other, which is in a sense like amplifies like just specific aspects of that sound, and that'll come back to you. And so you'll pick up these reflections, which are just like specific pitches that are in an otherwise unpitched tone too loud, right? So you try to get rid of those. The first thing I do when I put up paneling is I go for the corners. I put up like 3 squares in like the corner of the ceiling. I've got something called bass traps, which are really big, poofy wedges of foam that I put in the floor corners. Then I panel in front of, and if I can, above the instruments that I'm recording. So in this case, and what I was showing you in front of the marimba before, I've got paneling in front of that, in front of the vibraphone as well. I don't have a lot on the ceiling. I have a few on the ceiling, but I started to run out of panels, so I haven't gotten more yet. And like over here, we have some around the staircase, and they're kind of in a rough checkerboard shape just to help with the diffusion there. It's also good to avoid having things like windows, mirrors, picture frames with glass on them, stuff like that, because those are very reflective surfaces. In the place I used to live, I temporarily ruined my recording space by putting a filing cabinet in there once in an effort to be more organized. I just didn't think about the fact that it was a big aluminum box, you know. So I was doing some recordings for a composer named Will Roger, who is a video game composer, and he just wanted me to record like Cowbell or something like that for a game that unfortunately got canceled, but it took place in like San Francisco. It was like sort of surfer rock stuff, and I'm doing like some like Cowbell rhythm or something, and he like got it, and he was like, "Hey man, so I was like trying to like treat your recording. I was, you know, taking out reflections, and then I realized that by the time I finished taking out all the reflections, there was nothing left of the recording. Is there like another place you can record that? Or can you like show me your studio or something?" And I was like, "Oh, that's weird." And I showed him. He's like, "What the hell is that filing cabinet there for?"
Oh.
I was like, "Oh, what do you mean?" He's like, "That's definitely what's going on with my recordings. I like to like shove it out of the room." But anyway,
well, then I have to ask: is
Yeah.
that what the stuffed animals are for on the steel drum?
Yes, steel drums.
They're tactical stuffed animals.
Yeah, they're actually they're. So this is like this is a you know, killing two birds with one stone sort of situation. Since I specialize in video game music, I have tons of video game stuff all over the place, right? That's a big part of my brand as a streamer, including these stuffed animals. We got Sonic and Tails from the Sonic franchise. We got Mewtwo from Pokemon, and we got like a little star from Mario over here, right? But yes, when I'm recording, those steel pans are super reactive to any sound and any, like if, actually, I'll just demonstrate this really quick. If I take these off, I put my head down here and I clap, you get like this like big like metallic resonance from it. So I don't know how well my mic picked it up, but yeah, so I put these guys to work and they stay in here so that they don't ring too much.
I played with those many times.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you remember these. I've had those guys for a while.
I think we used to hide them or something.
Yeah. I think you guys
No,
like
we
you
used to
like
set
put
it
them
up.
around. Like
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
different positions.
put them in different situations.
Yeah.
It was all for soundproofing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why we moved it around.
Well, then when you hid
Exactly.
them, Doug couldn't record, and it was terrible.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
They had to trash the whole thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, this is great. This is a lot of you know, very useful information, I feel like, for us and for anybody trying to get started. In terms of mics, you know, it's always a question of what mics are good and how does anybody not knowing what they're doing know what they're looking for.
Right.
What do you have? Where would they be on the spectrum? And what would you like to have? What do people need to have? And what's the difference? And Scott, you can talk about this too, of course, because you've recently made some recommendations for us in terms of mics.
I'm curious that would they be different when you're streaming or when you're actually recording, you know, those microphones?
Yeah. So my mics are not like super fancy by any means. I have sort of I guess I could say that they're basically budget microphones in that I've only been doing this for a handful of years now. So the Line Audio CM3s, they were actually recommended to me when we were playing with a collective at Curtis. They have a great recording engineer down there, and he was telling me how there's some company in Sweden that makes these like awesome condenser mics. You know, they sound so good. One of the best microphones I've heard for that price point ever, you know? And so when I was on a gig in Germany, I got them. So they're by a company called Line Audio. I've been using them for marimba. They've served me really well. Over here, you can't see them right now, but I have a pair of NT5s by a company called Rode. That's R, O with the line through it, DE. And those were actually some of the first microphones I ever had, and they've served me really well as well for a very long time. And I've heard from a couple other percussionists who've also recommended them. So those might be good too. I will say there are a few surprises out there. my roommate Laura, the vocalist, just got a pair of Behringer C2s, I believe, which are another like small diaphragm condenser mic. They are like the budgetest of budget microphones. They are so cheap. I think it was like $60 for a pair or something like that, which is absurd. And they have no business. I'm quoting someone else's review right now. They have no business sounding as good as they do. I mean, they're not like the best microphones in the world, but for that price, I actually used them in a video game recording recently for a composer. I used them to record steel pans, and I remember he got back to me. He's like, "Hey, your recordings sound fantastic. I didn't even need to add reverb. You know, everything was already there." And I was like, "That's great. That's awesome. That's really lucky," because I took a big chance by trying them out. But I wanted to see how they would go. You know, so you know, if you have this is important to mention though. That's if you have an interface of some sort to plug them in. So when I'm talking about like my first microphone, my first recording experience sort of thing, if you're going to be streaming and depending on what instrument you're playing, and depending about how serious you are in terms of making a long-term investment into this sort of thing, there are a few different ways that you can go. If you want to do this sort of thing, but you don't see yourself ever being like, you know, doing a lot of recording professionally, or that's just not as interesting to you, and you just want to be able to jump on the camera every once in a while to play some tunes, but it's not going to be a big part of your life or your career or anything like that, I normally actually honestly recommend somebody look into getting a USB microphone. There's a company called Blue Microphones that makes a number of these, the Yeti series, I think in particular. They're very popular amongst streamers, actually, especially younger people who can't afford to get a whole audio rig. They just plug directly into your computer. You don't need an interface or anything like that. And they sound quite good. You know, they sound a lot better than what you would get from like a typical like headset sort of situation. That being said, if you are wanting to have some sort of long-term engagement or investment in recording, I would start by getting an audio interface of some sort that you can plug into your computer to let you plug in some XLR microphone inputs. So I have an 8-input thing. That is something that I, you know, invested in knowing that I was going to be doing a lot more of this and need more microphones. I actually started with 2-input audio interfaces. There's one by a company called PreSonus. The AudioBox USB 96 is a nice and fairly accessible 2-input interface. There's also the Scarlett Focusrite 2i2, which, like it sounds like, is another 2 microphone input. Those are great because then you can get like a stereo capture if you have a pair of microphones. You're able to record in stereo. There are a few companies that also make mono 1-input interfaces, and those are great too if you know you're never ever going to record in stereo, you know. But if you want to record in stereo, then it's great to get a 2 microphone input sort of thing. And you can expect to spend anywhere from $100 to $200 for one of these pieces of hardware, but they take you a long way.
And then that gives you flexibility about what microphones you then add on top of that, right?
Exactly. If you go the USB microphone route, you're stuck with that specific microphone. If you get an interface, you can use that with any microphone and continue to upgrade your microphones as you go. This is my second interface. The first one that I had, I probably used for like 5 or 10 years before deciding that I wanted to upgrade to something with more inputs.
And that's definitely plenty of time to realize how big of a part of your life it is, or it's going to end up being.
Well, also, the thing that made you upgrade the interface wasn't necessarily the audio quality. It was you wanted more microphones to be able to record more instruments here in your studio.
Yeah.
So
I will say part of one of the things that happened is like the interface that I started with was starting to like not function as well. And to be fair, I bought it refurbished. So perhaps this was going to happen to me. And that is not a criticism of the interface that I had whatsoever. It was older, you know, but yeah, part of the decision to upgrade when I started to realize that I should probably consider getting a new interface was thinking about things like recording drum set. And that is something I do every once in a while. Every once in a while, a composer will ask me to record drum set. I have a set of V drums that I use to record occasionally because I have more control over sounds when working in MIDI and using sample libraries in that respect. But oftentimes I'll want nuance, which MIDI is not good at nuance. It's not good at sensitivity and all that stuff. So like, let's say if I'm doing like a jazz gig or something like that, they want like brushes on drum set or something like that, then I will set up my actual drum set in here, and use that interface to plug in microphones on individual drums and get the overheads and do all of that stuff so that I can get a really consistent and clear capture of the whole instrument.
Scott, do you want to talk a little bit about that too, since that's literally kind of what you do for a living?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can speak to what we use at the office when recording artists when they come in to film some videos for Vic Firth Zildjian. Yeah, we actually just got a brand new board, right before all of this went down, by Allen and Heath. They're, a company out of the UK that make really great products. And yeah, I've recently, the company at Vic and Zildjian recently kind of got a partnership with Earthworks, and they make really great microphones. Yeah, Doug is making a face because he knows.
Yeah, those are good.
And so, usually at the office, we're kind of limited with where we can record. And so it's usually like in a cymbal vault or something, lots of reflective places that Doug would not approve of.
Mm-hmm.
But,
No file cabinets though.
Yeah, so I when filming drum set, like I typically set up a stereo pair of room mics, just to get the the room sound, 2 overheads, kick, snare. We usually individually mic all the toms. If it's a jazz artist, then we might not mic the toms. Usually do a hi-hat mic, and then sometimes also throw in a close mic on the ride as well. Yeah, I mean, most of the people that we record at the office are drum set artists, but every, once in a while we do have a concert artist come in, if recording marimba, and then, usually I'll just, do 2 overheads and then again, 2 stereo pair of room mics.
So in talking about mics, and both of you can speak to this because you both have purchased mics and looked for mics and et cetera, how do people know what kind of mic they need for whatever instrument or whatever sound they're trying to get? Like if you're trying to get the bass end of the marimba, I barely even know what diaphragm mic is or whatever that means. So what do you, somebody who's diving into the world of mics, how do they decide what recording pattern they want the mic to have and what's good for what, essentially?
Well, I'm not going to answer too much of this because I don't want to reveal how little I actually know about this. But I will say, like, for a percussionist, there are probably 2 different types of microphones that you should consider, condenser versus dynamic. And this is a big thing because we play so many different instruments that you're going to get different microphones will help you with different things. So condenser microphones will pick up far more space than a dynamic microphone will. So for these microphones up here in particular, when I have one pointed, towards the bottom end of the marimba, one pointed towards the top of the marimba, and it's picking up this big swath of space all around that. And honestly, I could have these on and be, on the other side of the room and like clap, and you'd probably be able to hear it decently well. It would just sound like I was really far away. Then we also have dynamic microphones, which only pick up sound that's really directly in front of them in a much smaller space. So I'll use condenser microphones to pick up instruments like marimba, that have a much wider range that I'm trying to cover. Whereas if I have to play something loud, like if I'm playing like snare drum or tambourine or something like that, and I'm trying to record that, I'll probably use a dynamic mic because I'm going to get, there's less of a chance that I'm going to blow that sound out while still getting a close picture. And it's also great to use them in tandem. So normally when I'm recording anything in here, one of the nice things about having these microphones always set up is that I can just leave them on and call them room mics, maybe kind of point them roughly in the direction of what I'm recording, but I have them set up so they're picking up a further away image of the instrument, the loud instrument that I'm recording. And then like, so if I'm recording snare drum, I might have that set up like over here or something like that with some barriers around me. I'll have a dynamic microphone on the snare drum, maybe another one underneath to get two images there of a close sound. And then I'll have these microphones on picking up the room, and then you can mix them together to get the right balance of how close the listener is to the instrument or not. So that's all I'm going to say, because if I talk anymore, I'm really going to reveal that I don't know nearly enough about this. Like, I really don't.
Well, it's definitely more than I know, especially in terms of looking for mics. But in terms of room mics then, because Scott, you were talking about setting up room mics and close mics, just a general condenser mic, almost anything that you might have as a condenser mic would be fine for room noise?
Yeah, I mean, Doug, maybe you want to speak more about this as well, but I typically, when I'm using room mics, even if it's for work or if it's like a freelance project, I typically use Omni Mics, which record in like a total 360 pattern. So it doesn't matter, if I'm talking right into this mic, I could be talking into the opposite end of it, and it would pick me up just as clearly. And so, there's obviously a lot of situations where you don't want that. But like if you put them up, way back in the room, it's great for, applause at the end of a piece because it's going to pick it up really clearly. Doug, I don't know if you use those or want to say any more, but
I don't think about it too much.
Yeah.
I mean, and part of that is because in my specific scenario, like an Omni mic wouldn't be very useful for me right now.
Right.
Like I mostly use microphones in cardioid patterns, which is looks kind of like a heart, and that heart is the top part of the heart is around the microphone. It just picks up a little bit on either side, and then the bottom part of the heart is the field that it actually picks up. Yeah,
that's nice. I've seen pictures of whatever the mic captures, and none of it makes any sense. It's just circles. So that's a nice image to imagine. It's just a big heart, basically.
Yeah, it's a big heart. That's why cardio, go running.
This has been a great conversation in terms of gear and tech and how to get started at a basic level and at an advanced level to keep pushing further and further. We'll have to have you back sometime to chat more about this and of course more about yourself, because we kind of just touched on some surface of your career, which is expansive conversation in itself. But thanks for chatting with us, Doug.
Can you just
and Scott.
Can you just play a little bit so that we can hear what you were talking about?
On the spot streaming without vibraphone microphones.
Oh boy. Okay, well then I'm gonna have to turn my reverb on.
Yeah.
Right,
this is through Reaper? Is your reverb through Reaper?
30 seconds. 30 seconds of something.
Yep. Okay, there you go. So now I should sound like I have a little bit of reverb.
Play us out.
There you go.
Was that 30 seconds?
Probably not. I don't know. I don't want to. I haven't warmed up today. I'm nervous. Yeah.
Well, it sounds great. It's such a cool system, and it's fun to watch you stream. And people should tune in on Mondays and now Thursdays, apparently.
Yeah.
Drum Ultima, Twitch.
Yeah, Twitch.tv/Drum Ultima.
That's what it is.
The URL. Yeah. You can put that on the screen. It can be like over there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate being on the show. It's great to see you guys, and it's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks.
Cool. Take care. We'll talk soon.